welcome to the Mindfulness All-Party Group's report launch, and it's fantastic to see so many of you here today, both from the mindfulness community and from parliamentarians. It's really fantastic. I'm Jessica Morden, I'm the MP for Newport East and co-chair with Tim Lawton here of the parliamentary group, and more from him later. But I'd like just from the outset to say a few thank yous. One to Madeline Bunting, Ed Halliwell, Jamie Bristow and Willem Caken, and the team from the Mindful Initiative Associates who are responsible today for putting forward this report, putting it all together and this launch. And I have to say they have worked tirelessly over the last 16 months, and the report is very much the work of is very much the result of those great efforts. Can I also, and very well deserved that was too. And can I also say a special thank you to Professor Mark Williams and Chris Culland from the Oxford Mindfulness Centre, who very much helped to start the Parliamentary Mindfulness Programme and the classes in here, which in a little room just down there, which have been provided for staff, MPs and peers. And so far, 115 parliamentarians have taken part in that programme and nearly as many staff. And I have to say the courses that have been starting to run over the next few weeks are particularly popular and very well subscribed. And I think it's this personal experience of mindfulness, the practice of mindfulness, that means that we all now want to spread the use of these techniques into public policy. And that's really what today's report, which you can pick up on the side there, is all about. And can I say, and I know there's a lot of thank yous, but can I say an extra special thank you and a tribute really to Chris Ruan, who is the former MP. Now, Chris really started all this, not in Parliament, but we will, really started all this off in Parliament and was, for, those of us who watched him over the last Parliament, was a huge champion for mindfulness in Parliament, never missing an opportunity to raise these issues, as were his fellow chairs in the last Parliament, which Tracy Crouch, who's with us, I know somewhere. And also to Laurelie Burt too, who was very involved as well. And I'm especially pleased today that we have not one, but 3 government ministers here today, and their time and interest is particularly appreciated by all of us. And can I also say sincere apologies from Luciana Berger, who's the Shadow Minister for Mental Health, who has a long-standing commitment on a panel in another room along this corridor, but very much sends her support too. Now, a year of research has gone into this report. There's been 8 hearings, I think, in Parliament. Dozens of scientists, practitioners and professionals have all had their input. And the inquiry shows good support for the government to invest in mindfulness training, in innovation and research, particularly at a time when innovation is desperately needed to address a mental health crisis in which roughly 1 in 3 families includes someone who is mentally ill. Only 1 in 3 of those with mental illness receive treatments, and prescriptions of antidepressants have increased by 500% in 20 years. Now, I know we all know this is not a panacea, but mindfulness does appear to offer benefits in a wide range of contexts and is important innovation in mental health. And we very much, as an all-party group, think the science is there, the proof of the health economies are there, and the report includes some reasonable practical requests of government that we very much hope they will take on board. So that's enough for me, for we have a number of speakers. For the rest of the launch, I will hand you over to Tim.
Jess, thank you very much. Can I repeat her welcome? And in the words of the great late Ronald Reagan, it's great to see such a dense crowd here today, because this is a very full room of lots of very interested and supportive parties, which is fantastic. Now, I'm also a fraud along with Jess, because Jess and I took over the joint chair of this organisation after all the work had been done. So we can't claim credit for all of that, but I'm really delighted with the strength of this organisation and the parliamentary group, and we're very keen to promote its work and carry it forward. And today's event is a really important part of that. So thank you all for coming and being part of it. Now, my job is purely to marshal the speakers who know far more about the whole subject than me, and marshalling three ministers and trying to keep them to time will be no mean feat as well. But we're going to start with Professor Mark Williams from Oxford University, who is going to tell us what this report is all about and why it is so important. So, Mark, over to you to start with.
Well, in 2 or 3 minutes, I think that allows at least 30 seconds of mindfulness practice, yes? Yeah. So since there's lots of people who've done mindfulness in the room, I think it is possible for you just to feel the feet under your floor, under the floor, under your feet, on the floor, and you make of that what you can. And those who are sitting can feel what they're sitting on. And you may even close your eyes if you feel that this is possible for you to do, but if not, just lowering your gaze. And realizing the simplicity of this practice, but how difficult it can be to do this simple thing. And then allowing your eyes to open and taking in the room again. As we see, mindfulness is very simple, but it's a skill that is an innate skill. It's awareness. Explaining mindfulness can be quite difficult to people, but it's easier to explain its opposite, mindlessness. We know what mindlessness feels like, where we're so preoccupied with something, we don't look after our own health and well-being. We're so preoccupied, we don't even know we're preoccupied. Our partners may tell us we are, our children may tell us we are, but it's all escaped our notice. And it turns out that we can train ourselves to reclaim this innate quality of being aware, of being mindfully aware. It's not about doing something complicated, but taking enough time to check in sufficiently often enough and with enough sort of care and curiosity and compassion to check whether our moods or our impulses are getting the better of us, are getting out of control. And that's really the essence of this report. This report talks about the consequences, the costs of being out of control in subtle ways and in huge ways. So in healthcare, in mental health, obviously, mental illness being one of the biggest burden of healthcare that we have, and yet doesn't get a proportionate amount of the attention. Where mood gets out of control, well, the evidence is now there that, for example, for depression, mindfulness is as good as preventing depression as antidepressant medication, for example. That's an extraordinary result that people have been able to report. But physical illness, where helplessness gets out of control, and when helplessness takes over, healing is damaged. In the criminal justice system, where people are having to cope every day with the sense of having let themselves get out of control in contexts that have really, really bad consequences for them and other people around them. In the workplace, where stress gets out of control, where people don't have the time, they feel overburdened all the time. And in education, where the challenge is there to invite our children and young people just to maintain focus in the face of so much distraction, where they can be overwhelmed by all the things they're having to face. And so health, education, criminal justice, the workplace, all domains where the evidence is growing. Now, there's enormous enthusiasm for mindfulness, and we have to ensure that mindfulness doesn't run ahead of the evidence. We have to make sure we're evidence-based from the beginning right through to the end, because it's the evidence base that will support the enthusiasm. But at least the enthusiasm means, some people say mindfulness is a fad, but at least it means that people who really need it because they're suffering can say, I'm going to a mindfulness class, and nobody minds. There's no stigma about mindfulness. We need the enthusiasm to make sure there's no stigma. And so here's the possibility of changing the trajectory of risk for many people in our population. It's got the evidence, and the evidence base is growing. And this report is an important marker of what's happened up till now and the promises for the future. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you to all those who've put the time in for this report, and I commend it warmly to you all.
Mark, thank you very much for that. I think it's the only time I've been in this room and a prolonged silence from the platform has formed an integral part of the presentation rather than somebody lost for words. So we are well readied for what's to come. And what is to come next is Tracy Crouch. And Tracy has been a big advocate of mindfulness in Parliament right from the start. She chaired the group before us. And she has harangued me and others on my side to find out what it's all about and become involved. And we've greatly benefited from that. She now finds herself as the Minister for Sport, a round peg and a round hole. And so we've had to take over the group from her. But her enthusiasm for it has not diminished. And she's now in a position where she can disseminate that purpose and that good practice amongst a greater audience. So, Tracy, we are delighted you are here today, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Tim. I've been asked to speak very briefly on how it is that I ended up doing mindfulness. And since I still find it quite difficult to talk about my reasons for entering mindfulness, I'm just going to do something for you, Chris Cullen. Taking my shoes off and anchoring myself. I'm not allowed to do that in the chamber now. I'm on the front benches. They can see your feet, apparently. In the middle of the first term of being a Member of Parliament, I began to suffer really high levels of anxiety, which spiralled into depression. And I went along to my GP, who instantly recognised signs of depression and anxiety, and prescribed me antidepressants and told me to go to therapy to see if that would help. And we have some wonderful therapists here on the Parliamentary estate, so I was very lucky to be able to have that access. That said, I found it wasn't really working for me. And this email came around from Chris Ruan, mentioning mindfulness, and I spoke to my GP about it, who happened himself to be a mental health expert and had practiced mindfulness with some incredibly challenging patients. And he said, I'll do you a deal, Tracy. If you do mindfulness, I'll take you off the antidepressants. So I was absolutely desperate to get off the antidepressants, and so I came along completely skeptical about the whole thing. I'd never done any meditation, been thrown out of yoga for laughing. So I thought, I'll give it a go. Be completely honest, the first week I wasn't convinced. Went back the second week, I was a complete convert. And ever since then, I have been both a practitioner but also an advocate for mindfulness. I think it's an incredible way of dealing with everyday pressures and stresses. And if you can build it into your life in a very natural and ordinary way, then it helps enormously. I still find it difficult to talk about, my reason for entry, but I'm proud that I'm able to do so, not only because I think that it will help reduce the stigma around mental health, but also showcase, what it is that mindfulness can do, and that in turn will help develop policy around mindfulness. I'm very proud to have been involved in the report and the development of the report. A great deal of hard work has gone in by a lot of absolutely brilliant people to create something that we as policymakers and opinion formers can go away and look at in more detail. Now I'm in the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, and sport being sort of predominantly my portfolio. It is interesting how many sports men and women practice mindfulness to help them concentrate and to really channel their energies at the appropriate time. And interestingly, it is quite interesting how often mindfulness does come up in everyday ministerial work, but also from a constituency perspective. For me as a local MP, I've always found it incredibly helpful. You will not be surprised, I'm sure, to learn how many people come into our surgeries and talk about the fact that they themselves are on antidepressants. I feel very privileged to be able to sit there and say, I know I've been there, and then offer that sort of advice around alternative therapies or alternative medicines. And I think this is a really good opportunity for us to showcase that. I continue to practice as much as I can, Chris. Interestingly, I was just talking to Chris and to Mark beforehand and explaining that I will be going on maternity leave at the end of January for my first child. both Chris and Mark directed me immediately to mindfulness in childbirth and mindfulness in pregnancy. I may be a convert, but I'm still thinking gas and air might be appropriate on this occasion. But I think breathing techniques is something that will obviously feature very highly over the next few months. So it is a real privilege for me to be here, and I thank everybody that's been involved, and long may it continue, because I think we're really at the start of something, not at the end of something here. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tracy. Well, there you go. Mindfulness can get you pregnant as well. So, is there no end to its applications? I have. Don't read too much into that, but I've been an MP for a little longer than Tracy, and for a minister, let alone any other MP, to make a speech about their own mental health challenges would not have happened some years ago. And I think it's a sign of how far we've come and how mental illness has been brought out into the open, and a lot of the stigma has been, but still more to be taken away from it. And mindfulness really is an important part of bringing this out into the open, what is an everyday condition that so many of our fellow men and women do suffer. And part of the solution is talking about it. And we're going to talk about it some more with another big advocate for mental illness, Alistair Burt, who is the Minister of State at the Health Department with the responsibility for mental illness, and has always been a big champion of this particular issue. And it's really good that Alistair has got enthusiastic about mindfulness as well, and is going to tell us what the Department of Health is going to do about it and how many billions of pounds they're going to be pouring into it straight after this meeting. Alistair. Thank you.
Well, I wasn't anxious before that last comment, Tim, but that's changed all that. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to say something about mindfulness and Department of Health's response. But Tim's stolen my best lines in talking about Tracy. Absolutely right. One of the reasons, I think, that people have been able to talk about mental health more, and that it's risen in political prominence and public prominence, has been because notable individuals have been able to talk about it, or not have been able to talk about it, but have chosen to talk about it, and in doing so have given a lead to others. You either have something that you're talking about, or you have something and you don't talk about it, but everybody's got something. And that people don't feel alone anymore, because people have been able to put it into words and be up there and have lots of people say, do you know, that could be me, is actually of huge importance. We're in an age when it is easier to communicate things perhaps than it's ever been before, but authenticity perhaps matters even more these days because of that. And those who can speak with such background and sincerity matter a great deal. So Tracy, thank you just for what you said. I'm the Minister responsible for mental health in England, and I'm delighted to be here on behalf of the department to be able to welcome a copy of the report, which I will take away with me, which the Department of Health will respond to in due course. Improving the population's mental health is a priority for this government, as it was for the last one. And let me again be counterintuitive, as we're all amongst friends, and say that, you know, sometimes politicians like to talk warmly about their opponents. I knew I'd shock you, so let me be quite clear. Firstly, I welcome what predecessors in government did, the coalition government and Liberal Democrat partners in government, and I pay warm tribute to Norman Lamb, who held the position I have before me. And I'm very pleased to see the interest played by all political parties. Luciana Berger's appointment to the Shadow Cabinet is an important development as well. So I know that there'll be continuous interest in mental health as we go through this Parliament, and that's a great thing. And I hope it's a good thing for you to know that there isn't a lot of party politics in this. There is the usual pressure always on the government to seek that it should do more, and that's fine. But that you're not looking for, and people are not looking for another political battleground in this, I think is really important. And that's not my intention. I know that's not colleagues' intention. So it's a really good thing to have so many people, so many politicians from different parties here today welcoming what's been done and talking in the same way. It's vital we do all we can to improve mental health, clinical and support services, and to encourage everyone to look after their own mental health and well-being. Mindfulness plays a big part in this, particularly in preventing mental health problems early on and helping to prevent relapses. One of the things the Secretary of State and I have in common is a focus on prevention. Young people need ways to build resilience and recognise the early signs of mental ill health. Not only is children and young people's mental health one of my 3 key priorities, it's a wider government priority. We've committed to investing an additional £1.25 billion over the next 5 years to transform services. That's no mean amount in difficult times. But mindfulness can also help people with physical health problems. I've been impressed with picking out the section in the report looking at the relationship with health. And I just read this little extract, if I may. One of the most important areas of research has been MBIs and the treatment of long-term physical health conditions. A recent review of 114 studies found consistent improvements in mental health and well-being, notably reduced stress, anxiety and depression in the context of poor physical health. In terms of specific health conditions, the strongest evidence presented is for the psychological impact of living with cancer, where 43 studies, including 9 randomized controlled trials, are described. Evidence is also presented from randomized controlled trials for the benefits of MBSR for lower back pain, fibromyalgia, arthritis, HIV, and irritable bowel syndrome. It's a connection not always made, but in looking at mental health services and development, the connection between mental health and physical health is something that's been lowly regarded over the years. And here's something again which brings that fully to the fore. So I've seen other evidence from other places about the important role of mental well-being in terms of physical illness, particularly diabetes, musculoskeletal problems, and I'm therefore keen to find out how much more can be done, and we'll take this report away to look at that. If we want to improve mental health care, we need to improve choice and access within existing mental health services, ensuring people can receive the right support for them at the right time. The world-leading IACT programme is already offering a wealth of different interventions, including mindfulness-based cognitive behavioural therapy for the treatment of repeat episode depression in some areas. People should have more choice and care, and we should be more flexible in what we deliver. So I'm keen to see more IAP providers offer a greater range of NICE approved interventions, including mindfulness where it's appropriate. But a world-leading programme like IAP must be based on the strongest evidence possible. Once a person has received support for a mental health problem, we cannot just tick a box to say they've been treated. We need to do all we can to help them to stay well and make sure they do not return with the same problem months or years down the line. That's not success. Mindfulness, therefore, can be a valuable tool that people use throughout their lives and whilst recovering from mental ill health. And I thank Mindful UK, my colleagues on the APPG, and all of you here today for encouraging more people to take up these tools and look after their mental health. Thank you very much.
Alistair, thank you very much for that. They're really encouraging words. And as Alistair said, given that long-term conditions account for, I think, well over 2/3 of the NHS budget at a time when we need to make sure those resources are being spent as effectively as possible, mindfulness has applications for many of those conditions. And on the preventative agenda, it's absolutely what we are about. So we look forward to the formal response from the Department of Health on our report. Now, the third in our trio of ministers is Nicky Morgan, the Secretary of State for Education. And I think many of us will have welcomed the new emphasis within the department on character and resilience in schools. Important though academic achievement is, there's more to school than just getting your qualifications, and making sure that we've got well-balanced kids able to get those qualifications and go on and be well-rounded members of society. So, Nicky, you're very welcome here today.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much to the All-Party Parliamentary Group for inviting me here today. You know what they say, ministers are probably like buses, you know, we all turn up at once. So getting one minister to an event sometimes is hard, but you've managed to get 3. Tracy, I'm really sorry that I missed your remarks, but thank you for making this big video. I can watch it. In that spare hour I have at night between 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning, I will definitely do that. I want to be here. I mean, Tim really said it all. In fact, I don't necessarily need to stand here, but since taking on this job, I have been very clear that, of course, academic achievement is important, but so too is turning out well-rounded young people who are able to fulfil all of their potential. And I say that not just as Secretary of State for Education, but also as a mother, and also as somebody who has had family experience of mental ill health. And I was very privileged. I still think one of the greatest things, I hope the greatest things I've done since being elected was to lead the first general debate in the House of Commons on mental health in June 2012. And, you know, it's a little step. There's lots of people in this room who have done far more on the issue of mental health. But hopefully just seeing those issues debated on the floor of the House of Commons, it seemed to get good coverage outside and with people in the gallery too. And thank you. We heard some brave confessions from members about their own conditions and experiences of the system. So I thank them very much for that. So it was really a no-brainer for me. But when I was fortunate enough to be offered this position by the Prime Minister, that as well as continuing with our education reforms, I do, as I say, want all young people to be able to fulfil their potential. And the reason I'm interested in this is because I want young people to be able to enjoy being at school, and I want to remove any barriers that stop them from achieving everything that they are capable of achieving. And poor mental health or poor mental well-being is one of those barriers that we know many young people have to face. We also know that if we can tackle these issues early and stop them developing into something much bigger, then actually that's a good thing that we do for that individual, for that child, but also for our society. And so that's why I'm delighted to be here. Like Alistair, I will go away and study the report in detail. And mindfulness really has captured the public imagination. I actually spent my summer holiday last year reading a book about mindfulness, and I'm sure I won't have a shortage of recommendation for reading going forward. But the emphasis on quiet and focus clearly resonates amongst people today, surrounded by the non-stop clatter and buzz of the technological age. And I know that the members of Parliament are not alone in finding life very busy and needing, and many have already trained in mindfulness, and I know find it of huge benefit. I think we can imagine the benefit that mindfulness can bring to schools. In fact, already is. There are schools up and down the country who are using mindfulness, and I note the recommendation in the report for some pilot studies, which I absolutely will take away and look at. I can't make any promises on money at the moment. We are subject to a spending review, but I hear what also said about the fund building what we've done on character. And I think it's important to say we do think it's right that schools decide for themselves what opportunities to give staff and pupils. Teaching schools are a key element in our ambition to create a self-improving school-led system. We want them to set their own agendas, and they are able already to include mindfulness training as part of their professional development offer if they want to do so. We know that, as I say, some already are. The MindEd website has been developed to enable all adults working with children and young people to learn more about mental health problems and how to support them, and it already includes information on mindfulness. But I'm sure that's something that we want to keep under review. So I'll be watching with great interest the impact that mindful teaching has on the well-being and education outcomes of our pupils. Let me just say a little word about character and resilience before I sit down. I talked about barriers. You know, we all want young people growing up today. I'm often asked the question, usually by younger people, is growing up today harder than it's ever been? I'm not sure. I think every generation says that growing up is hard, but I do think there are pressures on our young people today, particularly brought about by online. Now, we can't uninvent technology. We can't not be in the 21st century. What we can do is give our young people the resilience, the persistence, the grit, the determination, the self-esteem, the confidence to make sure they can tackle the challenges of the 21st century. And that's what our work on character is about, the character grants, the character awards. We saw some fantastic examples from schools across the country of all they're doing to develop their young people. We've put a further £4.7 million this year into voluntary sector schemes, testing a range of different ways to support children and young people's mental health. And Sam Gyimah is the first minister, again, one of the changes I made when I got to the DFE. He is the first minister, education minister, to have mental health in his list of specific responsibilities. And I'd like to pay tribute. Alistair was right about the joint working that's going on, and I know that he and Sam are working really closely and effectively together. And so please don't anyone say that government is not joined up, because this government very much is. And finally, we put £1.5 million into a joint pilot with NHS England of training for single points of contact in schools and mental health services so they can better support each other. Because teachers are not mental health workers unless, of course, they've got prior experience. But what they can do by working with their young people is to spot when there's an issue, and they need to know that when they refer on, that referral is going to be acted upon, taken seriously, and they're going to get that young person, their family, are going to get the support that they need. So I think this is very exciting. We do have a school-led system. I will be talking to schools, looking at schools up and down the country to lead work on this. I will study the report, and thank you very much to everybody who has worked so hard to contribute to it.
Nikki, thank you very much. Again, I think that's tremendously encouraging. And as somebody who's been a minister in the Department for Education, I just know how important it is that we address these things early and that we do work with other departments. And the fact that mental illness has got a much bigger profile in the Department for Education because of the alarming numbers of our young people who are developing problems at school is really encouraging. So thank you very much for that. And thank you to all three of our ministers. There's clear determination across government that this must be taken seriously and must be taken forward. And it's a forced investment, forced economy not to be doing it as well. Now, last but not least, we have Professor William Kaiken together with three young people who will no doubt steal the show, as they always do, with their experiences of how this has worked in practice. So, Professor, let me hand over to you. And your assistants to come on the stage. Come up.
It's absolutely wonderful to be here. I have the great pleasure of formally introducing this report to this group and just wanting to note the kind of sense of hope, optimism and possibility that it feels like exists in this room here today. A real sense of some fantastic things are going to happen in the coming years. The Mindful Nation report we've already heard has been the result of 18 months of work. 80 experts from within the UK and abroad have contributed to this report. It makes recommendations in four areas: education, health, workplace, and the criminal justice system. In the interest of time, I'm not going to have the chance to talk through those, but they're represented on posters all around the room. But one of the first things I want to say is what's really come through so far today is that the interest and enthusiasm and the imagination about mindfulness is in part because it's been a grassroots movement. What do I mean by that? Here in Parliament, Mark Williams, Chris Cullen started mindfulness classes over a year ago. Many of the people here in the room, 115 MPs and Lords and peers, and 80 of their staff have been through those classes. They have tasted and seen the potential of mindfulness, and they have become advocates. And the same is happening across those different sectors. And so it seems absolutely logical to hand the floor over to three young people who have themselves been through mindfulness programs in year 10, year 9, 2 in year 9 and 1 in year 10. So I'd like to introduce in a moment Anaya, Haroon and Adam. Anaya and Haroon are from UCL Academy, a school up in North London, and they went through the mindfulness class a couple of years ago, and they're going to talk about their experience. Adam went through the mindfulness program at one of the schools that pioneered and developed mindfulness. He is now a teaching assistant post A-level in another school, Marsh Academy, where he is involved in the rolling out of mindfulness in that place. And as Tim said, they are now going to steal the show. So over to you. Anaya's going to stand up.
Hi, I'm Anaya. I am a student at the UCL Academy. I'm 14 and I'm in year 10, and I've been studying mindfulness for about 3 years now. I've been seriously taking it into consideration for about a year. I was first introduced into mindfulness in year 7, where we had to go through a course of 8 weeks practicing different mindfulness sessions. Personally, my favourites would be FOFBOK and thought buses. We were taken through the FOFBOK practice by Professor Mark Williams, and where we essentially have to focus on the senses that we feel, from starting from your head going down to your feet, noticing everything that you feel, all your sensations, and realizing that you don't have to focus about everything else in your head. Another one of my favourites is thought buses, where I found this more complex, but it got easier the more I did it. It's essentially imagining your thought as a bus, for example, stress. And instead of getting on the bus and letting it carry you away, you stay at the bus stop and notice that you don't have to make it difficult for yourself. You can just think about what you actually have to. At home, my mum would always tell me that you're working too hard because exams and homework is surrounded. And she'd say to me that go outside, do something, take a short break. But for me, it never worked. I would still constantly start thinking about it. So doing a mindfulness practice, it allowed me to realize, to get rid of everything else that bothered me and think that I can do this homework. It's not that hard. It will become easier, and it boosts up my confidence so much. This morning I had an English exam, and before I walked in, I made sure I did a practice. And I managed to walk into that room feeling much more confident than I would have if I didn't. And teenagers like me can suffer from anxiety or depression, and it's part of a life that can overwhelm us. So I could never imagine myself doing this, giving a speech to important people a couple years ago, and now that I can, gives me the confidence. So GCSEs are also coming up next year. So being able to walk into that exam room and say to myself that it's not, you don't have to panic so much, you just focus on what you can, is beneficially the biggest part. And I've also realized that it's not just used for adolescence life. I can use it when I'm older. There will come a time when I need to apply for that job or pay for those overdue bills, and when it does come, I can come across it easier. So instead of letting my mind take me somewhere else, I can control it instead of letting them take me over. Yes.
Hi, and my name's Haroon, and I go to the UCL Academy School. I'm 13 years old, and I'm currently in year 9. My favourite lessons are science and history, and also I'll be studying and been studying mindfulness for about half a year now. I really enjoy the realism mindfulness has to offer, and I strongly believe in the science behind it. And today I will be talking to you about what the whole .B thing's about and how it works and how it's worked for me. Mindfulness lets you look at how your brain works and what your brain's going through and what causes your certain emotions. There are some activities you can do, like 7-Eleven and, as Anaya said, thought bus. But my favourite one is 7-Eleven, is because it's not one that really other people can see. It's just something that helps you calm your nerves down. 7-Eleven is when you breathe in for 7 and breathe out for 11 counts. Also, studies have shown that focusing on your breathing can center your thoughts and give you some control over them. I believe in a great way of helping all kinds of people in life. Now here is a quote from Dustin Moskovitz. Mindfulness has helped me succeed in almost every dimension of my life. By stopping regularly to look inward and become aware of my mental state, I stay connected to source of my actions and thoughts and can guide them with considerably more intention. Now, in my opinion, looking at this quote tells you that the substantial value of mindfulness. It has helped me at school when I'm feeling frustrated about being stuck on a question, or when I feel like I could get into an argument with a teacher or someone in my class. It's helped me observe my surroundings and assess my position in this carefully, so I know what happened and can resolve the problem. Now I stop breathing and be with helps me not react to things as much as I used to. Now I can respond in a way that I choose. Mindfulness opens up a sixth sense in your head, making you aware of that what happened and what you can or can't do. What is the best thing to do at that situation? Also, what is the right or wrong and its consequences? I still get into trouble sometimes, definitely not as much. Here's a little anecdote or a story. One night I was watching Richard Burnett, well, he's in the audience somewhere, TED talk about mindfulness. As he kindly quoted, mindfulness can help you with colds. I did a little research which showed, and I thought that why not use it in mental health and certain big public mental health areas, such as the NHS. I found mindfulness really helpful, and sometimes I tell my friends to do it before they do something that might get them into trouble. It's good to show them the practices and share the skills. I know it's useful in school and would probably be useful for jobs, so why not give it a try?
In the final line of Edward Thomas's poem, The Glory, he writes, "I cannot bite the day to the core." Learning to do this is what mindfulness is about for me. Spending 20 minutes a day focusing on my breathing trains me to pay attention in other parts of my life. It helps me to be there when someone's talking to me. It helps me to slow down and savor my food as I eat it. And it helps me to sit still and read the book I've been meaning to without getting bored or fidgeting too much. In short, it feels like I can bite the day to the core. This quality of presence also enriches my time spent on the stage. I'm more attentive to the shifting thoughts and mood of my character I'm playing, and I can be very aware of the audience without being put off by them. When I'm on a run, I can settle into my stride and just enjoy the air and my surroundings without worrying how long there is to go. These are the kind of things I've seen happening to students who are being taught mindfulness at the Marsh Academy down in New Romney, where I'm working as a teaching assistant. So as you'll have heard this morning, yes, mindfulness may offer ways to cope with anxiety and stress, and maybe it will improve concentration, but it is the freshness it brings to life which matters most to me.
Thank you so much, Anaya, Harun and Adam. Fantastic way to end the session here today. I'm mindful of the time and people's very busy schedules. The report is 82 pages long. I read it from cover to cover over the weekend. I really heartily commend the quality, the excellence, the consideration that's gone into this work. As I say, there's things around here around integrity and training, around research, around each of the four areas. I just want to finish by thanking the people who've not already been thanked, the directors of the Mindfulness Initiative, who have really led this process. So it was Chris Cullen and Madeline Bunting at the beginning. Ed Halliwell stepped in at the beginning, in the middle, and then Jamie Bristow, where are you, over there, who has shepherded this through to today. So a huge bow of appreciation to them. And to Tim Loughton and Jess Morden, who've stepped in to shepherd this group through to where it is just now. Thank you very much.
William, thank you very much for that. I am mindful of the time, and so we will wrap up very quickly. But I thought those three presentations said it all, and particularly those words of William at the end about biting the day to the core, I think really sums it all up. And now we know from Anaya as well that mindfulness helps you to be good public speakers, it helps you pass your GCSE, and it helps you manage your bills at home as well, as you are going to look forward to one day, Anaya, along with the rest of us. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you agree that this is an impressive report. It is worth the attention of the ministers and the wider audience that I hope it will now reach. You are part of that dissemination process. As Tracy said earlier on, mindfulness, its time has come, and we are at the beginning of a journey rather than at the end of a journey. And this report is a very important part of making sure that journey gets off to a good start and in the right direction. Thank you all very much for coming. I won't repeat all the names of those who played such an important part in the group and in this report. You know who you are, but I think this is a fantastic piece of work, and I hope it will be appreciated and benefited from well beyond the confines of the Attlee Suite in Portcullis House. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming. There are a few more drinks. Don't linger too much because we will get chucked out at some stage, but finish it up in the meantime. Thank you very much.